The more you try to keep me down and keep my head above the water, you can never hold me down. The more you try to block me out, that's where I kick the wall down. You can never hold me back. The more you try to put me out, the more I'll be blazing, it's too hot. The more you try to put me in the dirt, increase my work, the expert. You see the hunger in the eyes of a survivor.
Hey everybody, it's Casey with Pinecase, and I'm hanging out with Milli from Mean Bikini. Man, what a thing. Like, when Calico sent you my way, I was like, okay, we got some island folk, we got some good tunes, we got some skate punk, we got some acoustic, we got some like really eclectic things happening here. And honestly, like, explain this to me. How did this beautiful project come about? Like, if you can take me back to kind of the beginning, because I'm
sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I moved to the island in December 2020, so 4 years ago. And I had been playing in bands. It's been over 10 years now. And honestly, through the pandemic and stuff, my mental health really struggled a lot. I was working as a support worker for unhoused folks at like the height of the pandemic, which also really crossed over to bringing a lot of issues in throughout the toxic drug supply as well. So that was really heavy. I myself was like, my substance use was like running pretty rampant at the time, and I decided, you know what, this is it. This is time. I wanted to move out of the city for a long time, and after 10 years, it was like, this is my opportunity. So I moved to the island to work as a snowboard instructor for the winter, which was so great. And took a step back from the music for a bit because there wasn't anything going on. And once I started to connect with some folks out here, I met Josh, our guitarist, and I really wanted to continue playing music. I just didn't know what that would look like. I honestly kind of thought moving to a small village of 4,000 people on Vancouver Island was kind of going to be the end of my career as a musician, so to speak. And Josh and I just clicked right away and wanted to play the same shit, and started writing punk rock and really channeled a lot of that time that we all took away from being at shows and living in the weird world that was 2020 into our music. And we were like, you know what, like, once shows can happen again, like, people are just going to be so stoked. So we really wanted to create kind of a sonic backdrop to people coming back together in a social space, and like really having something that they could like let out all that energy to. So it was like a means of us to channel our own feelings, and also like with this big goal of like, as soon as shows can happen again, we want to have something to give everyone where they can really let loose. And that's kind of how it all began.
That's gorgeous. I know that COVID, I know it was horrendous for a lot of people. And I don't mean to be disrespectful when I talk about it this way. But so much interesting stuff came out of us all kind of trying to reinvent ourselves, or like look at, our hobbies a different way. And I think it's really kind of carved out space for like the intellect and the artists and interest that we would have never have had the time to kind of focus on otherwise.
100%. I think a lot of people took a lot of that time to learn things about themselves. I remember having friends like be like, okay, like, I can't go do anything, I'm gonna quit drinking and just do a bunch of yoga. And there's other people like myself who kind of went the opposite way and was like, I'm gonna run myself into the ground. And out of necessity, I had to do some shifting around in my life, which ended up really being a beautiful, massive blessing. And so many artists being locked away with the only thing to do is like write. It was a huge gestation period, I think, for a lot of people to create some really great stuff, like artistically and in their own lives as well.
Yeah. Is that kind of where eulogy came from? Because I was listening to that song today and I felt like it was kind of death of a idea. Am I looking too much into that?
That's an interesting interpretation of it. It's actually the song doesn't go very deep below its lyrics. I've been working in harm reduction for years, and not only through my work but just through being a human being living in a world where people are dying from drugs constantly. That song was written as kind of a call to action for the policymakers, and an opportunity to share with people the reality that our current policies around criminalization and safe supply and lack thereof aren't working, and people are dying needlessly. It's about losing friends to a lack of support for mental health. It's about losing friends to drugs. The song is just straight up like, this is what's happening, this is what we need to do, and we need to never stop fighting for this. And it actually we were just going in to record that album, and I had a completely different set of lyrics about a completely different thing. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm just going to do a rewrite. That song came about in such a natural way. And 2 days later, my harm reduction mentor, who got me into this work and really changed my life and a lot of other people's lives, passed away suddenly. So it kind of all came about at this really profoundly beautiful time. And this song became really special to us because, in our travels all over the country into different spaces, when we play that song in our set, I get everyone to take a seat on the floor. I sit on the stage, and I get a chance to talk about what's going on in terms of our toxic drug supply and the opioid crisis and just the lack of supports for people struggling. And I ask people to put their hands up if they've lost someone to drugs, if they've lost someone to poor mental health. And everywhere we go, over half the room at least puts up their hands. And we play the song, and at the end of the song, I ask the crowd, on the count of 3, to scream the name of somebody that they've lost, and we all do that together. And some people cry, some people walk out of the venue because it can be a lot. But
Right.
a lot of folks have come up to the merch table after, and it's just been a conduit to great conversation and sharing our experiences together of that loss. And through these talking about these things is just like a huge effort in destigmatization, because people don't like talking about this shit, and that's another thing that kills people. So that song really took shape into something that's meant a lot to us over the last year and a half or so.
Like
That's the
louder
long
for
answer to your question.
No, that's amazing. Like I don't know if you know much about Pinecase, but it's literally the backbone of the project. And I like from the back, louder, harder. Like I don't think anyone. Stay blessed, everyone who's never lost anybody to mental health or to the like I don't even want to say opioid because so much came outside of that as well. Like unhoused situation blew out of control, like murders went up through the roof, like suspicious deaths, like all this crazy stuff kind of came along with it. But I lost everybody. Like I mean, I'm from the island and I know that what's going on down there. Like it was absolutely heinous. Like one day there was a whole bunch of people and the next day there was nobody. And when we talk about what it looks like to be a drug addict, like the face of what that isn't what people think. And I find it really challenging sometimes. Not like obviously bringing any sort of negativity isn't going to help, but I'm like, it is your children. It is your brothers. It is your sisters. It is your nurses. It is the guy that owns A&W. Like it is people. Like it's not just what we used to think what an overdose looked like, right? Like, I mean, growing up, one person overdosed in my, in my whole life. And it was like so taboo and hush hush and like no one really talked about it. And now it's like common conversation, and you see these, you know, overdose awareness day, and everyone's got purple and all these empty chairs, and I'm just like, I mean,
it's really sad. And it's, you know, as someone who's like works in activism for drug use and drug education, like, you know, I feel for these younger generations too, who, like, you know, when I was in my early 20s, me and my friends were going out and doing all sorts of drugs and partying, and it was like a formative kind of like lighthearted, silly experience. And yes, it was dangerous. It gets you into dangerous situations. It's not great for your body. And we did have friends pass away, but like a drug poisoning wasn't really a thing that was happening. And, you know, like looking at kids now, you know, in high school who are wanting to experiment, and that, you know, thing that used to be a relatively innocent thing for us can now be somebody's extremely untimely death just because they want to try something. And there's still such a lack of education out there, which makes it more ambiguous and tempting.
Well said.
It's a really scary thing.
Well said, because a lot, yeah, you're right. Like when, you know, people would pass away back in the day, it'd be like from drinking and driving, or like an accidental death because, you know, someone like, you know, was too messed up and drowned or something. Like there was always kind of like, you know, other.
It's always been dangerous, but in different ways.
Yeah.
Now it's like a roll of a dice
Russian
with
roulette. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's wild. And yeah, you're right. It doesn't leave any room for like that sort of experimentation or experience or existence. Even like, you know, we would like do mushrooms out in the forest or something, and then learn something from it, or like, you know, have this experience where we needed to like care for each other a little bit more, or like, you know, oh, I didn't know so and so was like that or whatever. But yeah, there isn't that space anymore for the kids. So I think, yeah, the more advocacy there is for it, especially advocacy that looks like, you know, regular folks, because it doesn't all look like that. Yeah, I think
that's a really, really great point, and is super important. And people really don't like to look at an issue like that and be like, it could happen to me or someone I care about. People don't want to think about that. People like to be able to put blame on other people. There's all sorts of factors at play there, and we see it a lot in the Comox Valley out here, because there has been a big spike in unhoused folks, and it's such a divided sort of thing about between people's opinions here of, you know, what's happening, what should be happening, and how do we deal with it. And a lot of people that are getting upset don't have any solutions. They're just pissed off because they don't like to see, you know, what's really happening.
But that's right. If you don't have a solution, then maybe don't have an opinion, because you're very right when you talk about stigma, and stigma keeps people sick and dying. And I've heard really horrendous things like, oh, well, that helps the numbers, or that's cleaning up the streets or whatever. And I'm like, okay, you obviously have never lost anybody. But it really isn't necessarily the people that are no longer with us as much as it is the people that want to ask for help. And when you're constantly being criticized by your lifestyle, or constantly being criticized by the way that you, I mean, no one wakes up being like, I want to be a drug addict, or I want to be homeless, or when I grow up, I'm going to be it just doesn't happen. And so, yeah, when I think fighting stigma is probably I don't want to say it's more or less important as like naloxone training, but I feel like the more conversations that we have, like the easier the fight might be to deal with things like naloxone and unhoused and
absolutely. Well, I've seen it where people don't want to get naloxone training or take a kit with them at a festival or an event because they don't want people to look at them and think that they're a drug user. And that in itself is, you know, a symptom of stigma. So I really think, like, as such a like ground level starting point that encompasses the whole philosophy of harm reduction and will lead to other things, is that piece of decreasing the stigma through conversation. It's like the most powerful tool to all of this is acts of being able to decrease that and having conversation.
Yeah, and exactly. And I just want to be like, everyone go get an naloxone. Everyone needs to go rip off the Band-Aid, go to a Shoppers, go to a Save-On, whatever. Go and just ask for one and see what happens, because it should be part of like first aid training. And now I mean, they're a little bit better with it, and it is like an added piece. But much like the people that you're talking about, when I did harm reduction at a music festival a few months back, I had the kit like sitting on the dash of my truck. Just one. I had like a box of them in the back, but like just the one. And I was using it for like demonstrations or whatever. And like a friend of mine, like someone who knows what I do, knows me well, knows my history, like leaned in my truck and was like, should I be worried? I'm like, worried about what? Like they had no idea what was in that kit. Like they're thinking that there was like substances in there. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? This is wild. Speaking of which, actually, while we're talking about it, gatekeeping. Have you ever come across the issue with people not give, like when you go to ask for an naloxone kit, only giving out like one?
Yeah, I mean, that I feel like that is just dependent on supply. As somebody who I coordinate harm reduction for a festival in town here, the Wood Stove Festival, and I've worked at different events in different capacities, and like I've had to just give somebody one kit just because of the amount that we have, and we want them to cover as much space as we can. But if you go to like an organization and are trying to acquire from there, I would think that typically you should be able to get as many as you need because they're a supplier of such, and it's free from the government. So
yeah, I've been hearing lots of horror stories lately, like, oh, I was at the hospital and they gave me 2 kits, and I'm like, oh, that's lovely. What is going on over there?
I mean, it's taking more and more naloxone to be effective, if at all, given how tainted the supply has gotten. So sometimes it's going to take 9 ampules of naloxone, which is 3 kits worth, to revive somebody.
That is shocking. Like that's shocking.
What a lot of people don't understand too is with benzodiazepines being in the mix so consistently now, like we at one of the organizations I work for do drug testing where we can see what is in a sample. And I don't know the exact statistic, but I'd say the majority of the opiates that people are using are mixed with benzos. And when mixed with benzos, they have similar effects. They're both nervous system depressants. They both repress breathing, cause people to not be conscious, but naloxone doesn't do anything for that. So we're getting all of these super complex overdoses where the only thing you can do for that person is try and breathe for them because you're trying to hit them with naloxone over and over and over again, and it's not working. And it'll keep people out for like 10 hours, So another reason why we need safe supply programs so people can know what the fuck they're getting and not have to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was hanging out at a detox center about a year ago, and it was like people would come in and be like, I'm a heroin addict, and they're like, no, you're addicted to benzos and fentanyl. Like, no, you're actually like
no heroin anymore.
Benzo, like there is no heroin in any of this. Like, not only is there not heroin, but there's like, I mean, most of it's like meth and benzos, really. Like, it's just wild to see what some of those tests look like coming back. Just like, holy. But yeah, you're right. It changes what the solution needs to be. And I never say this right, but xylene, am I saying that right?
Xylazine, yeah.
Xylazine, yeah. I think
I don't want to say anesthetic.
Right. And that's another one that needs like a totally different like solution to that. You're not gonna be able to problem solve with naloxone as much as you try, which in turn kind of creates like this artificial sense of, I mean, because you could need 9 kits and not fix an overdose, but then use 9 kits and it be benzos anyways, right? So yeah. It's a tricky situation.
It really is.
For you, like when you started in harm reduction, what did the landscape kind of look like? Like what was the focus at the beginning towards like what the focus is now?
It was definitely different. It was 7 years ago that I started working in harm reduction on the downtown east side in Vancouver. And at that point I was working with like a grassroots team of volunteers. Like it wasn't even a registered not-for-profit at the time, which eventually they came to be. But we would meet up twice a week, make sandwiches. Some of the people on the team were social workers. Some were volunteers like myself who had no formal experience and wanted to help. And then some of the folks were paramedics or EMRs. And we basically pack our bags full of food, naloxone, and clean needles and go walk around the downtown east side, like connecting with people, giving them food, looking for people that have overdosed. Like one of the big issues at the time then, and it's still an issue, as far as I know in that area, was that there were overdose prevention sites where people could use and be supervised if they did overdose, but they closed around like 8 or 9 p.m. So kind of a big objective of this group was to go around and provide support, you know, in case people did overdose, as like an after hours means. And like, you know, we'd sometimes stay out till 4 o'clock in the morning. There'd be nights where between all the teams, there was, over 20 different overdoses happen if like a bad batch is going around down there. Yeah. So at the time, that was, at least in my experience, was a big effort, was just going down there and providing some external support, filling a gap that didn't exist at the time. And now kind of my most recent stuff that I was doing, I spent the last 2 years working as an outreach worker for a pilot project that was funded by the BC government to provide actual fentanyl to people that were at high risk of overdose, because the current safe supply, that being dilaudid, wasn't doing what they were hoping that it was going to do. It turned into, more of a form of currency for people, and
but it always has been a form of currency. I don't know, like they could have asked like 5 people, on the streets what that was going to look like, because dilaudid has been a form of currency for other drugs since dilaudid since the birth of dilaudid. And I mean, same with like, what is it? Like all of them, actually, all of them, right? Like all of them, all of the pills. And I mean, I don't know for like people in the comment section that know much about it, but it's wild when you see like somebody have these like super heavy prescriptions and then they go and change it. I mean, a lot of the time they didn't even exchange it for money. They just changed it straight over for street drugs, right? Because it like amplified their
because it didn't do it. So, yeah, it was heavy maybe to folks that weren't using it, but to them, like a jump from the fentanyl on the street to that, like people were still getting sick. So this program that I worked for, in the form of patches and Fentora, which are sublingual tablets, rolled out. It's been going for 2 years now and has been amazing. Has shown amazing results. There's no chance of diversion, which was a big issue. So people aren't like, there's a big misconception with safe supply that's, we're just giving drugs to people. We're just giving drugs to people that are addicted, and then it's going to end up on the streets. This is like a highly regimented program where people need to get referred by their doctors. They come in, they're supervised while they are given their medication, and the medication doesn't even get them high. It's just there to keep them from getting sick, so they don't have to choose to use the unregulated supply on the street. They know it's fentanyl. It's going to work. It's going to reduce their pain. It's going to help them not be sick, which, leads to so many other things. And then they can go and focus on other things. Like we've gotten people housed once they've stabilized on their doses. We help people access the food bank. We've helped people reconnect with their kids because they've stabilized. Like there's so many obvious benefits to these types of programs that are still so scrutinized. And it's like one of the hardest parts of the job is just seeing people still not understanding at its core what the program is.
I had a conversation today. Someone kept saying to me, this person is clean. This person is clean. This person, like, aren't you so excited? This person, and I'm like, I mean, great. This is wonderful. But clean was never really the goal. Thriving is the goal, right? Because as soon as you get comfortable in your own skin, then all these other things kind of fall into place naturally. And then once you get those things, then coming off of all of that stuff becomes a little bit easier, right? Like you can start feeling a little bit of discomfort throughout your day because everything else is good to go. So I just, I super love when people like get to a space where they're clean and sober, but I don't, just like you're saying, it's actually not the goal, right? Because you really do need to fix this problem from the inside out. And it's a lot easier to do that when the person is comfortable. Like forcing somebody into like a detox situation is a temporary solution. And it just makes me, I like white knuckle for that. Because I'm like, oh man, like there's a reason why that has been so unsuccessful, right? And a lot of people don't know what those numbers look like.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, these programs are so great. I'm like, they've got like 2% success rate, maybe. Like it was so time for someone. I mean, I don't know if all of this is the solution, but I do know that we're headed in the right direction. Like at least people are starting to look at alternative measures and being like, okay, we got to attack this from like different angles because the old way just was not it.
Yeah.
Like,
and forcing people as like a punitive measure into recovery is not going to do anything other than like there's a huge piece that they're overlooking there. I mean, there's a few. One is actual evidence-based research. And the other piece is if you're taking somebody who is, really struggling with their addiction, force them into recovery, their tolerance goes way down. They leave and they relapse, their chances of overdosing and that being it are astronomically higher. Like, it's
because they have no tolerance, and it's like, what do you think is going to happen? They go to do the same amount that they've always done, and that's it. Whether it was a tainted supply or not, like that's it, man. There isn't any tolerance left. Exactly.
Such a classic way for people to lose their lives. Like I have a few friends and colleagues and people I've worked with in the past and know in different avenues who that has happened to. I had a friend named Bradley who I worked with. He was somebody who had a ton of lived experience, ended up getting his dream job of being an outreach worker for a reputable housing organization in Vancouver and was doing great. He had like a year, he relapsed, and due to the shame and stigma, didn't want to go use it in OPS, didn't ask a friend to come over. He relapsed alone and he died. And like, people don't even have the option to recover when they're dead. So it's a wild battle. And I just took a big 5-month leave from that job after 2 years of doing it because there's so many levels in which I was burnt out, and I'm kind of slowly allowing myself back into that space. I've actually switched into working with youth, which I'm really excited about. It's like a new avenue that I've yet to explore within the realm of support work, but I'm staying on a casual basis working for the harm reduction organization I was working with before, and it feels really nice to be back in that space in a bit less of a, not in a full-time capacity. And I think that, working in advocacy, it's such a fine line to balance your mental health while supporting people and, being an advocate and also taking care of yourself well enough that you can keep that fire burning and not burn out.
That I don't think it was ever meant to be a full-time gig, or it shouldn't be. Like from a structural standpoint, like it just shouldn't be. It's not fair. It needs to be funded better and more appropriately so people want to sacrifice part of their lives for others. And I say it like that because that's very much, it is, I'm not even religious, but it is definitely angels amongst humans, because you have to be a certain type of somebody to deal with, I don't want to say the living dead, but it's a community that I'm extremely familiar with and have no problem kind of saying that to you. I'm not hating on anyone. I've been there. But to not take that home and to not feel anything with it, because you're talking about people that are so fucking cool. Like you're talking about people that are like, they've been given these ridiculous options. Like, if you do this again, we're going to take everybody you love from you. We're going to take your kid. We're going to take your job. We're like all this ridiculousness that are like so heartbroken, and all they want to do is not feel uncomfortable. Like, I don't know I don't know if any person is like built to like go and do that day in and day out and not take it home. Right. It's like straight humanitarian work. So,
it's important to take breaks. And, that's another thing something that I really love so much about the privilege I've been afforded to be in this band is it's been such a fantastic canvas to, so to speak, I guess, for like, activism, and like to have an opportunity to talk to people. And, the punk community is full of people who don't fit into other places in society and in, common culture. So there's like this massive sense of empathy and of shared experience there. I mean, like, you go to shows and you're seeing like so many queer kids and, people from all different walks of life, and people, who are neurodiverse, and, through all these kind of like more niche experiences creates just like such a space of empathy. And then getting to talk about these issues in those spaces, people who share the same ideals or are open to them, and to learn or have conversations after, it's truly a blessing to like just be in such a massively open-hearted space.
The punk, the metal, I mean, there's a couple communities that are like no other genre of music, and there's more love in those spaces than a church, honestly. Like, it's amazing. And it's really neat that you've taken advantage of that a little bit, like taking advantage of having the mic and taking advantage of like having that space to be like, this is what we're going to do. Because especially with all ages shows, like, to be able to have kids there that are like, seeing somebody that looks like them, that has the same passion as them, that experiences the same things, like, it's just so absolutely valuable. And I think, and it is my personal opinion, and I feel like I've done enough research, but it has a much more profound impact than the traditional methods. And it's why I think music and mental health belong together. I don't know why it's even really like, why it isn't like, that isn't just the standard. Like, this, this child is struggling, or this kid is having a moment, like, hand them an instrument and show them a community, and see what happens, and it doesn't even need to be that crazy. So again, like, I commend you for all of that, because it's just such a beautiful thing. And you obviously don't have to do that. You don't have to take the time to do all of that, but clearly there's a reason. Can you tell me a little bit like about why some of those topics are so important to you? Because when I went over to the website, there was a couple of words that stuck out, and queer was one of them. And then when I went to go and check out the rest of it, I was like, this isn't actually something, not that I'm trying to put anybody in a box, but this isn't kind of traditionally what that always looks like. Like, I'm not saying, and again, I don't want to put anybody in a box. I got love for everybody. I just mean like, to kind of push that topic a little bit more than other bands. And then it not kind of be at the forefront of like, explain to me a little bit like what that looks like.
Yeah, we don't want it to be a gimmick. I mean, 3 out of the 4 members in the band are queer, and have different gender representations and different preferences. And I mean, it was really interesting. Right before this band got started, I came out as queer, and developed my own connection to my gender expression and my identity that I knew for so long but didn't really have much of a relationship to, and shows I really took some time to kind of connect with that, and it felt incredibly liberating. And right around the same time, I met our bassist Lori, who is a massive advocate for queer folks. They actually run Outhouse Records and Outhouse Productions, who have bands signed all over North America, most of which have queer or gender diverse members. They're always pushing for safe spaces for people and to have like a large representation. It's been really beautiful. I've learned a ton from them through that. But it was kind of serendipitous that, you know, a year after allowing myself to kind of ease into this space as a queer identifying person, we noticed that like 70% of the people coming out to our shows were queer youth.
Oh, wow.
So I think it is really an underrepresented demographic of people in the music community, and is also a huge portion of people that do listen to this type of music and do have these spaces. And for a long time, like so many spaces in life, like outside of, we're talking about the punk community here, but outside of that, there was no space for queer folks. People have had to hide who they truly were for so long. And I think if there's any space that you can show up and be authentic, regardless of who you are, as long as you're not a huge piece of shit, a punk show is one of those spaces. And I mean, show up at a punk show and be your authentic self if you are a piece of shit, and you'll get dragged out, and that's also important.
Yes.
But you know,
So
part
funny.
of this is just us advocating for, you know, what we wish our experiences were when we were younger, us advocating for how we want the scene to continue to grow as a whole, and the importance of creating space for people that haven't really had other spaces. And I think that's why, you know, one of the really beautiful things, and again, this just kind of came out of nowhere for us when we started playing these shows, was we realized that these shows that we're putting on in this small, relatively remote community are having all these young, queer, eccentric people coming out. And it's like this is their space. This is the space that they feel comfortable to dress the way that they want to, and be around like-minded people, and truly express themselves and feel safe to know that they can do it. And it's been really beautiful to see. And that is why, you know, we make a point to let people know that we are a band comprised of multiple queer people, and that we hold and have space for queer people in our spaces. And if you don't like that, then don't come to our shows. And we haven't had a problem with that. Like, everyone, for the most part, has been fantastic, and we've gotten to create a really broad community spanning the entire country and down to the States with other bands that all share a common ideal. And it's created this really, really, really beautiful, expansive sense of community that has, you know, been life-changing, really.
Yeah. You guys have done it in such a tasteful way, and I think
Thank you.
that, yeah, I couldn't think of the right way to say it, but I think that that's probably most appropriate. Like I said, like, it's interesting to see, you know, some of those words kind of everywhere, and then look at it and be like, this isn't kind of what I was expecting, like what it kind of looks like traditionally. And again, no shade to anybody, but you guys have done it in such an organic, respectful, comfortable, relaxed sort of way that it doesn't really matter who you are. It's clear that everybody is welcome, right? I mean, as soon as I turned it on, I was like, I don't know. I mean, you can put queer wherever you want in this, but I know a bunch of rednecks that would love this shit too. So, you know,
Yeah.
You guys have done a really great job of like opening the doors for everybody. It's totally cool.
Pardon me.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
That is one of the things that I love. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
That I truly love about punk music is that it is a bit like outside of people's, you know, common scope for what they would just put on and listen to necessarily, unless you're actually into it. But a punk show is a space that I feel like a lot of people that don't even necessarily listen to that music or identify with that culture can have a good time. So it's a really accessible space for people to come and, you know, regardless of who they are, feel free to be comfortable, feel free to be themselves, and to like witness a truly inclusive community, and that they can bring to other areas of their lives. You know, and just as you were saying, it's like, it's not just punk for queer folks. Like, we have a massive amount of space for those people, but it's music for anybody that wants to have a good time and listen to it, or may have experienced some tough stuff in their lives that can identify with some of the stuff we talk about. We try and keep it a balance of being fun music and also using it as a platform to talk about addiction and suicide and, you know, some political stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, you guys aren't messing around with that either, right? And I think obviously nowadays those things kind of go hand in hand. Like you said, like, you know, there needs to be some serious reform, and we really need to start lobbying like local governments and kick some shit into action to make some of the bigger wheels turn for sure. But I think historically, punk has kind of always done that, right? Like it's always kind of been like that rebellious place, and
100%.
yeah, I love the thought. I'm just like, when you were saying all that, I was like picturing that space. Like you really don't have to even care. I mean, I've been to enough punk shows to know that you don't even really have to understand what the hell anybody is saying to like jump in the pit a little bit and like just let some energy out of your body and just like, you know what I mean? It's like a form of like meditation and therapy and release and like connection. And you get that many people in a space all kind of doing the same thing rhythmically, much like, you know, house music. Everyone kind of hits that place where they all kind of dial in together. And there's something to be, there's something to be said about the vocals. Like, how in the hell do you prepare and maintain for that?
There's things that I've learned are really bad for my voice.
Okay.
So I try and avoid those as best I can. I don't always do great at it. But just practicing, I've been teaching myself how to do different vocal styles since I was a teenager, and through like a lot of trial and error have found a way to preserve my voice. We just did an Eastern Canada tour back in October. It was only 9 days, but it was 9 days in a row with no breaks. We did last year like a 19-day cross country tour, but that had breaks in between, even like a day, you know, it'd be like 5 shows, then have a day off kind of thing. And this last tour was the most consecutive shows I've done in a row, and I just was diligent about doing my warm-ups and tried to like eliminate a few things that I knew were specifically bad, and the voice felt good. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Wicked, man. And then tell me a little bit about the acoustic thing. Like, was that specific to, pardon me, I can't remember the studio that put it on.
Oh, that like acoustic live session that we did?
Yeah, that was wild. I was like into it, and then I was like, oh, whoa, wait a second. Like, what is happening here? Yeah. Tell me about that. Like, that was
people often bring that up. That was like that was so long ago in the context of like how long the band has been around and what we've done and the forms the band has taken. That was actually on our first ever tour with our old drummer. That was like right when we met our bassist Lori. Like we literally talked online for ages about stuff, and they booked us a tour, and then our bassist that we had quit the band, and Lori's like, I've been playing bass for 20 years. Like, I'm happy to fill in. Like, okay, this is perfect. So they just like hopped on for this tour they booked, and at the end we asked them to be our forever bassist, and the rest is history. But that was 2 summers ago on our first cross country, or our first tour. A few days into the tour, we came through Cumberland to play a show, and some pals in the community who run the Cumberland studio were doing like a acoustic live video session and reached out to us and asked if we wanted to do it. So we just stripped it down. Lori, our bassist, also is a cellist, and like played in a touring folk band for a long time. So they were pretty stoked to like bust out the upright bass. And our giant drummer at the time, Ronnie, played a very, very tiny kit that was really funny to watch how small it was. And we just picked a song and went for it. And like people bring that up all the time, which is so funny because like we don't play that song live anymore. We have a completely different drummer and sound now and stuff, but like it still stands out to people. And like I would love to do something like that again sometime. I actually do like some solo acoustic stuff, and a few times I've played sets and have had Lori come up to accompany with cello, and our guitarist Josh come on, and we'll play some Mean Bikini songs on acoustic at shows. It's always a fun time. But yeah, that was a really cool experience.
That is super cool. That's a really cool backstory. I think maybe because it's acoustic and like I was anticipating all this like punk, and I was like going into it being like, and maybe just the way the algorithm lays out for YouTube or whatever, but it pops right up and I was like, what in the heck is this? Like, how fun, because not everybody's willing to kind of put themselves out there like that. And I was like, that's really neat. Like I really got into that. What's up with the name though? Like, what is it? Can you just tell me about it? Like, what is Mean Bikini? Like, because first of all,
it's nothing.
Okay.
It's like just a fun name to say.
It is.
You know,
it totally is.
We were struggling with a band name for so long, and I was on a ski trip and drinking tequila in the back of my friend's truck on the highway, and another friend of mine was DJing. Yeah. And I was like really trying to just like keep my mind open to like names as they came through, and had a big list in my phone. And my buddy put on Bikini Girls with Machine Guns by the Cramps.
Oh, shit.
And I'd never heard that song before. It's a fantastic tune. And I was just sitting in the back, and all of a sudden I was like, Bikini Girls with Machine Guns, that's a sick name. And I was like, Mean Bikini. Like, it just sort of popped into my head, and I was like, that's kind of stupid, but like it's fun to say.
That's awesome, man. It's totally freaking awesome.
And yeah, that's just kind of what stuck. And we actually covered Bikini Girls with Machine Guns for the first few months of us playing live shows, which is fun, just to kind of pay homage to the name. But people ask us like, oh, are you guys like ripping off Bikini Kill, or like, you know, like, nope, it's just a weird name that popped up. It's stuck. It doesn't mean anything, which actually is kind of fun because it like allows for us to just have our own sound that is not necessarily about like the name isn't about the sound. We don't have to like stick to the image of the name, but we've created a good brand with it. And yeah, it's fun. We're Mean Bikini.
Yeah, man, I'm here for it. I think, and yeah, your brand power is on point. Like, you guys obviously put some serious thought into like what it was going to look like as a package with the sound too, right? Like, throughout every single, I mean, I hit up a lot of your guys' live stuff, and like a lot of it had like a very similar like through line, which I think is, you know, the makings of any good band. But to be able to do that and still kind of have this like liberated, independent moments with all these like great like you know, things to represent is just it's music to my ears. I love it.
I'm glad you enjoy it. We have a great time doing it. We're, you know, definitely have been like a live band. We've put a huge emphasis into all of us being on the same page for wanting to play music in as many places as possible. We played 35 shows this year, and that's quite a few for, you know, a band on an independent label that is self-funded. And yeah, so we, you know, through that have put a lot of thought into how we want our live shows to go. We're really excited because we're working on a full-length album right now. So we've been getting to play a few live songs, but we're really excited we're putting a bunch of time into like demoing the songs ourselves, crafting them up really thoughtfully, and then going into a really rad studio to track it all in the best possible quality, and having, you know, we're hoping it's going to kind of take us from like Mean Bikini's a live band to Mean Bikini is a live band that also has, you know, a body of work out there for people to listen to, that people can connect with, and that we're really proud of. So that's kind of like our next big goal.
So but you guys are never going to lose like touch with because you guys do like a lot of crowd work, obviously, right? And like having people participate with your music is definitely, I mean,
absolutely
a huge piece of it, right? Oh, so that's super cool. Why is that anyways? Like, does that have to kind of go back to like just all the things that you guys want to make sure that are covered? Like, why it sound, I don't know if I'm asking this right. Why is interacting so important? Like, does it go back to just feeling that like sense of community? Because not everybody is that like intimate with their fans or with a crowd or like with an audience in general. And I just found like that was kind of one of those through lines that I seen a lot, that you guys really, there was like a lot of really intimate moments that happen.
I think like at its core, initially, I learned, pretty early on in my 10 years as being a front person in a band, that if the crowd is having a good time, it's so much easier, more comfortable to be up there. And that started this, pretty natural progression of like, okay, I just need to be as like out there and as I can. And the more that the crowd is engaging, the more we're all in the space together. We played a festival called Massive this year in Nelson that was just like absolutely mind blowing, like the best people. It was one of the most special experiences I've ever had being in a band. But they said when they were doing their little kind of blurb about us, they're like, this is a band that isn't like, hey, look at me. It's like, hey, come join us.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I didn't even think about that. And that's very much what we're going for. I mean, it really does speak to our ethos as well. Like it's become like this like thought out, curated thing to create avenues to interact with the crowd. Like Calico said in the chat there, be it hopping on a surfboard and literally crowd surfing, or inviting the entire crowd up on the stage, or before the song starts, teaching the audience like a small piece of the song that we can sing together. It really brings that collective energy in. And it's like, I get to feel it and really be there with all these beautiful people that are in the crowd, and other people that are there get to be in it as well. And like, I want to create an experience, and we all do in this band, where it's like, you're not just going to a show to watch a band, you're going to a show to participate in this thing. And now I'm even finding it in, in my writing, like with this new album, I'm like purposefully writing in parts that are going to translate into crowd engagement at shows.
Cool. Yeah.
And it's just the best feeling. Like, I feel like I've done a good job up there if people are singing along and people are moving and people are interacting. And that's honestly, to me, like the biggest part of it is just like creating a space where we can all take part in this 40 minutes of music together. It's so fun and so sweet.
Congratulations.
I'm like cheesing so hard just thinking about it. It's like my favorite thing in the world, honestly.
No, you have me like right there. Like, yeah, absolutely. Congratulations, honestly. Congratulations on all the success and just being out there and being an advocate for people and being able to create these experiences, because I not everybody does that. And I don't want to, I'm not, whatever, but not everybody does it. Not everybody loves music and other people the same way. And I think it's amazing. It shows, even when you started this conversation about working in harm reduction, clearly it's something that you are passionate about. And so to be able to translate that into music for people to experience is just an absolute, it's a mastercraft. And I just adore you for it. So
I feel really lucky because, as I said, our bassist Lori is like a huge advocate. I mean, they take so much of their own time to run their label and run their label, book tours, and play in this band. Our guitarist Josh is like always just trying to find like the most ways to be like an interactive guitarist, and is like so kind, and like the first person to go to the merch table and like start talking to everybody. And our drummer Ashley has like this massive heart and a immense wealth of experience, not only as a musician but as a human being that she really pulls in. So we all together get to share this common goal and this passion for music and the things that go beyond that a little bit. And I feel just so grateful to have like landed with three of the most, what's the word, like, I found my people that I want to create with for the rest of my life.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it seems like there was a lot of synchronicities that had to have lined up to make all that happen. But once you're there, you guys locked in, and yeah, what a blessing, hey! Like what a thing, like what a thing. And you know what? It all happens for all of us people, all of us cool people to hang out and to bear witness to. So as much as it is like, you know, something that you cherish, it's also something that we get to cherish with like right alongside. So I think it's super cool. I'm so excited to come back to the island. You guys gotta let me know when you're like flying through Alberta too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I hopefully sometime in 2025 we'll be making it back out that way. And yeah, like huge ups to you for what you're doing and connecting, you know, these important, and as you were saying earlier, like destigmatizing conversations about mental health with music is such a great platform. And I was really excited to be invited on to be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah, no, we're super happy to have you. The honor is absolutely all of ours. If you guys haven't already, go and check out Mean Bikini. You will not be disappointed. Calico, I think, has already actually thrown all the links in the comments, which is pretty awesome. Shout out to Calico and everybody and the whole band, actually, Mean Bikini.
And Dave.
Yeah, hi Dave. And everybody else that's in there. I see Candy and J Life and Felice and a bunch of other really cool people. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. It is always a pleasure. If you guys haven't had one, or if you want some instructions on how to deal with naloxone kids, you guys can reach out to Calico or I. We do have them on hand, so we'll be more than happy to hand them out. We can also point you in the right direction of where you need to go to get them. We do live demonstrations. If you're not comfortable with it over so everybody can see you, we can definitely do it video chat on the DL. It's no big deal.
Also, if anybody at all is on the island or in the Comox Valley, reach out to us on the Mean Bikini page. I'm an overdose response trainer as well, and like always happy to offer trainings. So if you're in this part of the world, hit me up.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. It's always good to have an ally and all of that stuff and know where to send people for sure. And if you're having to go by, I know Shoppers Drug Mart has been carrying them on hand. And there's also a ton of other places that we'll list in the comments. You guys stay safe, take care of each other, please, and thank you. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Blood my pride washed down with some saliva. Reinvented my whole life, mental MacGyver. One door shut, another open up wider. Listen, battle drums in the distance, moving with enough force like army tank pistons. Pray for the strength of Jah to fight resistance. Fight mode, shields up, moving with resilience.
With the strength of 1,000 lion and the strength of 1,000 giant, please stay strong. Please stay strong. With the strength of 1,000 elephant and the strength of 1,000 tiger, we stay strong. We stay strong. We stay strong.
The further you take my vice away, I'ma run to it, refuse to hear my voice. Speak loud when I spit it, but you don't get it. You just wanna be a side critic. See somebody else showing hate in the side of the road with it. Now how would you feel standing on the sideline and watch the color of a nation deteriorate over time? The flag real high, but compassion 6 feet below. Now you're searching for that justice that decided to never show. Deny my place and back with a trace. Keep up the pace, tight lace, game face, get back in the race. Whatever they did could never be undone. Every dark night ends with the rising of the sun. Squandered every wealth that's built from the mud. Squandered every wealth that's built from the blood. Squandered every wealth that's built in chains. Stolen from the ancestors, running through my veins.
With the strength of 1,000 lion and the strength of 1,000 giant, please stay strong. Please stay strong. With the strength of 1,000 elephant and the strength of 1,000 tiger, we stay strong. We stay strong. We stay strong.
I can see, run to the light at the end of the tunnel winner.
We stay strong.
I can't breathe, we're gonna get oxygen without the justice system.
We stay strong.
And I know, gotta keep my head together.
We stay strong.
Don't doubt me, please don't doubt me.
We stay strong.
Tell me how can we be strong if we still shooting? Tell me how can we be strong if we still looting? Tell me how can we be strong if we still hating? Please tell me now, please tell me now. Tell me how can we be strong if we're still divided? Tell me how can we be strong with egos inflated? Tell me how can we be strong with so much hunger? Please tell me now. Please tell me
The
now.
strength of 1,000 lion and the strength of 1,000 giant. Please stay strong. Please stay strong. With the strength of 1,000 elephant and the strength of 1,000 tiger, we stay strong. We stay strong. We stay strong.